What's up, it's the Monster Man here, and today I have something outside of my normal videos on this channel. I was in the mood to do a game review, and this game has really caught my attention, and it's the type of game that's had me thinking about it even when I'm not playing it. And it's just made me wonder why more games haven't gone down this route, and I hope we see more like it in the future. So today I want to talk about Blazblue Entropy effect. Most people watching probably don't know I'm an avid fighting game player, and outside of fighting games, one of my favorite genres is roguelite genre. For those who don't know, a roguelite game is what I call the modern arcade experience. It's a genre where you're expected to play a game from a set starting point multiple times to see how far you can progress. This is essentially the experience you would get from an old coin-based arcade, where when you die, you restart from ground zero, especially if you can't offer up a coin to keep going. It's modernized in the sense that even though you start from a standard beginning point, the run is actually different each time you play. So instead of truly starting from zero, your character is typically a little stronger than they were the previous time, helping the odds that you'll get further and further into the runs each time you play. This progression system is not actually so dissimilar from the fighting genre as a whole. Each time you lose in a fighting game, you ideally learn something from the loss that you can take into future matches, making you that little bit stronger to eventually get a win. And against the human opponent, and even arguably an AI, no two matches are truly the same because you have so many options in a fight. This is kind of why I'm surprised it's taken so long to see a spin-off in this vein. Seems like a match made in heaven to me. A 2D action roguelite is the perfect fit to spin off a 2D action fighter, and Blazblue Entropy effect gets so many things right in this regard. But let's actually start getting into the game. As I said before, Blazblue Entropy effect is a 2D side-scrolling action roguelite, and given that my two favorite roguelikes currently are Dead Cells and Rogue Legacy 2, which are arguably the two benchmarks of the side-scrolling rogue genre, I came into this game with low expectations, but I am happy to say my expectations have been practically exceeded in every way. So let's get the most obvious things out of the way: the visuals. Blazblue, the fighting game, is known for its gorgeous sprites and animations. The hand-drawn style and fluid animations is synonymous with the series, and even if the anime style is not your thing, you can't deny the skill execution on display when you watch combos and motions in Blazblue games. I expected Blazblue Entropy effect to come close to capturing this style, but this game has gone beyond my expectations. The sprite work on display here is immaculate, and the lighting effects on how the models change colors and different lightings from the environments is nothing short of amazing to me. This game is a visual spectacle, and the character animations capture every bit of what I want from a game bearing the name of Blazblue. These feel like the characters are just plugged in here. Every move is recognizable, every motion is clean. It's just given this updated coat of paint that Blazblue, I think, has needed for a while. The enemies and bosses are also distinct and have exceptionally fluid animations as well, and the neon attack effects will keep you stimulated in every run. Without a doubt, the visuals do justice to this franchise. But a pretty game only gets you so far. So how is the gameplay? In short, it's awesome. It isn't without a few flaws, but I will save that for the end since this is an early access game, and a lot can change, and is changing before its release. The challenge of any roguelite is to balance player skill with the randomness of luck-based drops, and this is something even the best roguelites struggle with. Rogue Legacy 2 arguably doesn't give many drops or choices that lead to broken builds, which means it possibly overemphasizes that focus on player skill, so you really have to enjoy your class that you get at the start over anything else you could pick up in the run. And Dead Cells is arguably made significantly easier with a few good pickups, so player skill matters a lot less in that game with the right build. Maintaining this balance is arguably even more important in a game spinning off from the fighting game genre, which is all about expressing yourself through skill. You want players to feel like they have the most impact in combat, but you also want the rewards to feel impactful, and I feel like Entropy Effect has actually found this balance. Every pickup in Blazblue Entropy Effect feels significant even at the lowest rarity. There are two types of cards that improve your character, being tactics and potentials. Tactics are gained each time your character levels up in your run and are typically passive abilities tied to actions you take, like dashing, crouching, or just on a cooldown timer. Any character can pick these up. You will feel the damage increase from any tactics you choose, be it adding shadow attack, light spears, or your summon slimes. Unlike some roguelites, and I will call out Blade Assault for doing this to some degree, though it is actually a decent roguelite if you want to check it out, but some games, like Blade Assault, have pickups that only add raw numbers to your attack, and that is just not as satisfying as seeing a new animation from a skill come out to strike at your enemies. An Entropy Effect avoids this pitfall by having practically every tactic have a new animation tied to it, so you know exactly what your tactic is doing and what effect it's having, and it's not just looking at raw numbers, which I think is awesome. I think they also made the smart choice of having your tactics tied to deliberate actions, like having slimes come out when you crouch, or explosive shadow clones come out after dashing. Means you have to use your own skill to take advantage of your tactics choice, and having that extra layer of optimizing the ability just feels good to play. The other card types you can pick up at random after clearing certain rooms are called potentials. These are the green cards that change your core moveset, giving you access to new special attacks, or even changing your character's core combos. These drops are unique to your character, and will often be the remixes of moves you're familiar with the character having from the Blazblue games, but changed up so they fit in the roguelite space. The beauty of these pickups is that a majority of them are additive, meaning you don't typically have to sacrifice anything in your build to have new attacks and special moves, and I think that is great game design. A lot of the moves that add special attacks, for example, make use of directional inputs like holding down the special, or using directional inputs like left or down to give you a second more powerful special attack when you have the right amount of mana on hand, but it doesn't get rid of your original special attack. So you're typically getting more options as you play instead of making the choice for which one's best. This game manages to give you a lot of combat depth with only a few attack options. You have access to one primary light attack, and when the button is held, that turns into your heavy attack, which is generally good for opening up combos or big damage, depending on your character, because most heavy attacks either launch the enemy or just deal massive damage. Your second button is your special attack, which starts the same every run, but can be changed by either having that original special attack modified to do more, or like I said before, adding different inputs to your special attack to open up more options. You also get access to 2 support skills eventually after you advance in your runs a bit, but I'll come back to that. Like all great action games, you do have an invincible roll. However, the roll function is slightly different from character to character. For example, Hakumen's roll is also a strike attack by default, while S's roll, when timed correctly, is a dodge attack that leaves behind one of her swords to do damage to enemies, rewarding good timing. Combining these simple attack systems, you'll find your characters and entropy effects have more actions they can take than most side-scrolling 2D roguelites that tend to only give you a weapon with 2 attacks and 1 extra skill to use. The other thing I love about this title so far is its level progression. The levels are broken up into short training sessions that have some variation but are generally focused on beating all enemies in a room, which is extremely fun, so I think they are right in not getting too far out there with the room objectives. After each room, you gain experience and your entropy goes up. Entropy is a system that makes enemies harder to defeat, and the higher the entropy, the more negative status effects that start to appear at random. This is very similar to the Risk of Rain 2 system that makes more enemies spawn levels more difficult as fights go on. You will randomly get the option to enter rest rooms that lower the entropy and restore health, or shops that can reduce entropy at a cost. There's also the Sortio room, which has a roulette wheel that drops many things including entropy reduction, but also has a random chance to give you nothing. So choosing that room introduces a risk versus reward element that I kind of love. And I think that's the thing I love about this game design. You have to make a lot of meaningful choices each run. After every level you get an option of a couple rooms, and every time you pick one it feels like your choice matters. Are you going to rest now when you don't need the health to lower your entropy, or just take the chance on an advanced combat room for extra XP and get that next upgrade? You're constantly making a choice every moment in your runs, and I love it. I think this game also does a great job of encouraging you to experiment. Trying new items gets you closer to unlocking new characters, so instead of worrying about optimal builds in your early runs, you'll often be trying to pick as many new items as possible just to edge closer to unlocking the next character in the roster. There's even a bit of an encouragement system where some of your room options you may not want to take may guarantee something like 10% health restoration at the end of that room, which could make you second guess your first room choice. For example, you may not want to do the enhanced combat training, but the enhanced combat training may guarantee 10% health restore if you take it, and if you have a build that already restores a little bit of health for combat, you might not have much chance of a loss. So you'll take that choice over the easier training session that would only guarantee you half the experience. Another thing I like about this game is that it even identifies synergies for you when using your potentials, and that added element adds on to the build experimentation as you try to do runs to unlock and see those different potential combinations to see what works best for your character. This is some of the peak roguelike game design in my opinion, and I definitely recommend trying it out. I have been playing for hours and there's still a lot I haven't seen for every character. The final thing I want to talk about is the Evo Type System, which is probably my favorite aspect of the game that I hope future roguelikes start implementing a version of. And I wouldn't be surprised if roguelikes down the line start introducing systems like this. I won't claim this is the first, but it's the first time I've seen it. The Evo Type System dictates your 2 abilities tied to your triggers, and you only gain access to the system after unlocking at least 2 or more characters. And not only do you need to unlock them, you need to complete a run with them first before you get access to their abilities. I like this system again because it encourages you to not only play other characters but to do well with other characters you play. Because the better you do with the other characters you play, the better the passive perks you get from the Evo Type system. And you can't take the Evo Type of your same character into following runs, so you have to switch it up from time to time. The way the system works is you choose basically 2 assist characters, and those assist characters give you an ability. As far as I know, these abilities don't change, and it's kind of based off the archetype of the character you pick. For example, Hakumen will give you a block attack, and someone like Lambda will give you a projectile turret. And the better you do in runs with your following characters, the more passive abilities are tied to that ability you pick. And those are useful buffs for your runs. So you do want to do well with every character you take into the training system and try to optimize your run as best you can. And this has the outcome of making every run feel important because it can have a direct influence on your next run, and it gives you a goal to shoot for outside of just beating the final boss. You want to get your character as strong as possible for the buffs, whoever you consider your main, if you have a main that is, but that isn't all. The game also has a challenge mode, which is typically a series of boss fights, and this is another mode you can play to unlock more characters. Your only option for this mode are your saved Evo Type. The Evo Type save your full build from the end of your run, and that is what you have to use for the challenges with all the passives and potentials intact. This gives you a second chance to appreciate a good build, even if you feel like you lost where you shouldn't have, which is how I feel all the time. And the game is good at telling you what power level your Evo Type should be before you take on this challenge mode, so you don't get in over your head. And I just love this extra value and importance they tie to your runs outside of the slow power progression. It's just like a great way to appreciate a good build more than one time, and I hope other roguelites figure out a way to implement this system. I think this system captures how roguelite is supposed to feel, with every run having significance and the potential to make further runs stronger, and more games should do something similar. Now, even though I strongly recommend trying this out, I do feel the need to point out a few things about the game that might need a little bit of work. This game is still a little light on level content at the moment, in my opinion. The duality of the skill-based nature of the game means that some people will just breeze through this title with their chosen character pretty quickly depending on their skill level. In 3 or 4 hours, I already made it to the last boss fight of the game. I have not beaten this boss fight, but many better than me at the game have, and as far as I'm aware, the only reward currently is a hard mode, which has the same levels and bosses. Now, this isn't terrible because you can get fun out of unlocking more abilities, finding out the best builds, and doing that with each character. And I do expect more bosses and levels to be added before the full release, but it must be said, you can run this game, if you're really good, in about 5 hours, and if you don't find a lot of enjoyment in short roguelike runs, you may feel the game gets a little bit repetitive and that you've seen everything. With so many items and character progression and a story, that does mean there are reasons to keep playing and completing runs. But if your enjoyment of a roguelite stops at seeing the same bosses 7 or 8 times, you may want to wait for a couple more things to be added before actually picking up the title. And actually the story is one of the last things I did want to touch on today. For Blazblue fans, the story seems to take place in an alternate universe that doesn't initially seem to tie into the Blazblue verse. I know that was a turnoff for some, but I will say the mysteries within this story are pretty compelling to me, and it hooks me enough to want to see where it's going. You play as this robot in a world where seemingly everybody is robots, and you're under the thumb of a shady organization that is making you do these mind training sessions where you play as the Blazblue characters. And essentially the mystery is you want to figure out what the organization is doing and how to stop them because they're being shady. For lack of a better term. You meet several characters along the way who are against the organization, and you find story items during your runs that give you the backstory of the verse as you go along. I'm about 14 hours in so far, and I'm not seeing any direct Blazblue ties, but again, I think it's compelling without that, so I'm not too angry. But you should be aware if you're going into this game that just because there's Blazblue characters doesn't mean the story is that typical comedic Blazblue story. Now, again, this game is in early access, and things are changing all the time. For example, when I first bought the game, restrooms did not restore health, only lower entropy. Now that they restore health, runs are considerably easier, and I never really struggled to reach the final boss like I did when I first bought the game, but they may still adjust that going forward. S has been added to the game, and she was teased to be coming since it launched, so now she's finally in there, and she feels fully fleshed out and fun to play. It costs no extra money if you get in now, but that's just an example of how much early access games can change. They're adding new characters, changing the rules, doing all kinds of things all the time. But that being said, if the game sounds and looks interesting to you, I think you will find that $20 is well worth it, even with the amount of content that's in there now. And if not, just keep your eye on the game, because with a little more content, this is going to be sitting with the top dogs for roguelites. As it is, I still give this game an 8 out of 10, especially for Blazblue fans or fans of roguelite. And for me, that's a must-try rating. I don't make too many gaming videos on my channel, so clearly there's something about this game that I really just encourage people to take a look at. But that's about it for this video. If you made it this far and you like this style of review drop, leave me a like and let me know in the comments what you think about this game and if there's some others I should check out. And if you're interested in seeing more reviews like this, like and subscribe, and I will provide. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have an awesome day.